Okay, hey everyone, how are you doing? So I'm now live with Holly. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. So for those of you who don't know, so Holly was leading growth at Slack and Google Store, and she's now an advisor for lots of different SaaS companies. And today we're going to be speaking about growth marketing, right? So growth marketing for 2020 and beyond, lots of different tactics. And before we get into things, I would love to ask you like your story about how you got into digital marketing and how you came to lead growth at both Google and Slack, which are two amazing brands, right?
Yeah, I totally fell into growth marketing by accident. I actually studied Italian in undergrad
Oh, wow.
and European studies for my master's. So totally not your
Wow.
like business or marketing degree and career path. I was really interested in like a lot of things that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So that's why I went into consulting, because I can learn a lot of different things as my first job. And I was pretty lucky that I worked with a group of innovation strategy consultants. They were doing projects based on Clay Christensen's innovation, disruptive innovation theories. And we worked with Fortune 500 companies to really thinking through what kind of new products they should launch in the market to face the disruptions. So that's where I got really interested in innovation and technology in general. Then I joined a startup when it was very few people, pre-seed, pre-product, and we were working out of the founder's kitchen table, and I ran product and marketing there. What I learned from that experience was we were very much focused on product development. And back then, the idea is if you build it, they will come. So we didn't really do much like marketing, right? Like we wrote blog posts and we posted, we had a Twitter account, but that was pretty much it. So I got really interested in growth marketing because like, okay, I need to figure out how to get users and actually
Yeah.
grow our products.
Hmm.
So that's when I joined Google, and I was like, okay, like Google is one of the best in doing marketing, and let me try this out. And I ran. So I had two roles in Google. First role was with Google Ads and Google B2B website. So I oversaw all of Google's B2B product website strategy globally, including AdWords, DoubleClick, and Google Analytics and AdSense. Those contributed to 90% of Google's revenue, and the customers ranges from very small businesses to all the way up to large enterprises. So that's where I got really into personalization strategies and conversion optimization, etc. My second role at Google was with Google Store, where it's an online store that sells Google hardware products like
Okay.
phones and tablets and Google Home, etc. And that's where I joined as the first marketing person. So the whole range of marketing from like just defining what product we were building to like product marketing, brand marketing, and go to market and growth marketing from all the channels. That's where I went really deep into growth. And then at Slack, I joined in 2016 to run their growth performance marketing. And Slack at the time mostly grew from organic and viral word of mouth, but they knew that to put fuel on the fire and really scale up the effort. And that's where I
Makes
built
sense.
the team and started going.
Because I remember when I started at Typeform, they were in contact with Slack and said, hey, you don't have to pay any money on paid ads to grow. But we learned that you can spend money on paid ads and grow, right?
Yeah, so I think like typically in very early stage companies, I always advise start with organic channels and start building, your viral loop. Start thinking about your content strategy and SEO because that's really the foundation and doesn't require a lot of investment versus an growth stage companies, and you should start thinking about how to really scale your effort. And that's where effort became more and more important.
It makes sense, right? Because if you just started and you want to do paid ads, you don't know your CAC or lifetime value, all these different metrics, it's hard to make it work in scale, I guess.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's like the main reason, or do you think there's other reasons why like early stage startups shouldn't first invest in paid ads, if that makes sense?
I think the most important factor is to find product market fit, to make sure you're actually building something that people love to use, and look at your retention rates to make sure you're actually retaining the people that you acquired, instead of having a leaky bucket. And you can feed a lot of people from top of funnel, but if they don't stay, you're spending a lot of money to acquire them and not retaining them. And once you have a pretty flat retention curve, that's when you can add fuel to the fire.
Okay, and that makes sense. And like if you're like an early stage startup and you're trying to figure stuff out before you like add fuel, which is like I guess the paid ads, right? Like how long does that normally take? Does it take like a year, 2 years? Like this depends. I don't know. I'm trying to think out loud.
Yeah, it really depends on the type of products you're building, and the user segments as well. So if you are, like a B2C products, and you can get really viral, and overnight you can get, like hundreds of thousands of users, and for enterprise products, maybe your target market is only, like 1,000 biggest companies. So the business strategy and the growth strategy would be very different as well. And
makes a lot of sense.
It takes a long time to close. The sales cycle is longer, sometimes like 3 months, 6 months, and or longer.
Yeah. I mean, that's why before I thought like for B2B brands with the longer sales cycle, etc., it's harder to invest in paid ads because like the lag is longer, right? So you have to rely on predictions to know if your investment was actually worth it.
Yeah, that's why it's so powerful to work on your bottoms up self-serve funnel. So a lot of companies started to think through, okay, even if we are a enterprise B2B products, how can we acquire users, first of all, cheaply, and two, in a faster pace? So that's when if you offer a self-serve option, that can come in the format of either freemium or free trial, to get the end users to start using your product and really trying the product, get to the aha moment in a faster way. And over time, they can build the habit of using your product. And so that's a lot more powerful than having a sales team and trying to build a pipeline in 3 months and 6 months. I see a lot of enterprise companies started to try that route.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you would say like any company right now, which is like super sales driven, so try and find a way to be more product led.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not a fit for everyone, especially for products that requires a lot of upfront setup cost. Right? You're spending a lot of the almost like sales engineering effort and time to even set it up in the first place. But if you can figure out a way to get the end user to at least try some of the more like a table stakes, so they can see, oh, like here's what the product is look like, and build your different tiers of features, so that they can gradually build a habit.
It makes sense, right? I guess it's about that, and also about giving people value up front before they even speak to any salesperson, right? I guess
exactly,
because I was seeing this. I don't know if I should call it like a meme or a picture on LinkedIn, where it's showing you like the model you should take is more of the product led, where the sales team don't sell the initial, let's call it plan or subscription. The sales team, they should really dig like dig into the different customers and see who can they can upsell, right? So that metric would be more around like increasing ARPA rather than driving like new MRR, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly how Slack grew, and a lot of the other product-led companies, Zoom grew. It really derived from who are our most engaged and active users, and sales team can almost like milk the existing users and say, hey, like these are the most likely to succeed. We call them like a product qualified leads. Through these highest intent customers and sales team, when they reach out, it's such an easy sell. And so marketers will save acquisition cost, and sales team will also increase their conversion rate.
It makes sense, because like another approach you could take is if you want to find these specific people, like you could do an account-based marketing campaign on LinkedIn ads and find the exact companies you want to find which meet all of your requirements. But if you do that, then they haven't got the value up front that they would get if they would go through a product-led funnel, right? If
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because person-based targeting is actually pretty expensive. So if we were not doing more of a like initial sort of a feed of the end users, and just go out with a person-based LinkedIn targeting, it can get really expensive. So after you build this pool and identify the most likely to succeed customers, and then started doing the more like ABM and LinkedIn and person-based targeting, and that success rate will be a lot higher.
It makes sense. And I guess with like the more bottom-up approach, it means you have more data to optimize your product, because you can actually run an A/B test. Because if you do like the super sales model, you just don't have enough data, like traffic, to even run a test. So you can improve your product, and also you can actually drill down into who is my real ideal customer in the first place, right? I guess.
Exactly.
Because if not, you're kind of just guessing. Like on paper, this is my ICP. Let's just go after these people, and you kind of figure it out. But with the product-led way, then you get a bunch of people in your product, and then the data kind of tells you who to go after.
I'm curious, was that your experience at Typeform as well? Like,
I mean, Typeform, I mean, like 99% of the MRR just came from self-serve. There wasn't any big sales focus. I think they're working on it now, so I don't have that experience at Typeform. I think it's something they should have done and could have done, like to figure that out. But definitely, like at least from optimizing the product, we're trying to optimize the top of the funnel, so we could optimize the bottom of the funnel. If that makes sense, so you have more data going in. But then the danger is that we never got around to optimizing like the checkout flow, which could have had a huge increase in new MRR, right?
Yeah, actually, like the monetization part is something that's really hard to do. I've been thinking about that a lot, because if you change pricing or your checkout flow, that requires engineering effort, infrastructure changes, and it directly impacts your bottom line. So a lot of companies are pretty hesitant in making any big changes. So we really want to be very careful and cautious about it.
It makes sense, because I know at Typeform, some of like the biggest inflection points in growth were actually increasing the pricing, right? But like you said, a lot of people were wary if they should change it or not. And like you read articles online where people have like automatic pricing experiment changes for all the users and this kind of thing. Like, I don't know, in your experience, have you done like many pricing experiments, or is it more in other areas of growth?
I've seen companies doing some monetization tests. It's actually a pretty tricky thing to do, because if you are running tests at the same time, and one group of people may say, hey, like, Typeform reduce their pricing, and and so that could cause confusion in the marketplace. And how do you communicate that with your existing users versus your new users? How do you set the test population, how to measure them. So that's all something to think through. Companies don't do monetization experiments very lightly.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like at Typeform, we had 2 pricing pages. One was on the website and one was in the product, right? So we had to make sure they were had parity, so that people didn't see one price in one place, but in one price in another place.
Yeah.
But I don't think we had cross-device tracking. So if you looked at your phone, it would just say something different, which is the difficulty of doing pricing experiments, right?
Yeah, the cross-device has always been a tough problem to crack. And the cookies are not really talking to each other, and people change devices as well and clear their cookies. So some of the ways we're trying to connect the dots are if people signed in their different devices and try to connect the dots at the back end and start people's behaviors.
Okay, and this lead on to what we were going to discuss about personalization and ABM strategies. I think I read in one of your articles about loss of IP identification, this whole shift of being more anonymous online and how it creates difficulties for us as marketers to use these different tactics, right?
Yeah, exactly. Super powerful, right? Someone's IP address, the size of the company, the industry, and you can create personalized landing pages. And sometimes even, if you know the company, it's hey, other companies like Coca-Cola is using our products and sign up. So it's really powerful. But now people are on home Wi-Fi, and a lot of people are not really using VPN or so the technologies that identify these IP addresses will probably see a lower match rate. So as a marketer, it became harder to really track people because their personal email address and work email address sometimes don't connect. And your cookies from your personal browser versus the work browser don't connect. And now you're using multiple devices at home. So in order to do a better job with ABM strategy, I've seen a lot of companies moving their existing sort of display budget, which is based on cookies and IP addresses, and now moving to more of a person and user level targeting, so that you can, let's say, do LinkedIn ads to really target the key decision makers in your one-to-one or one-to-few ABM strategies.
Okay, how does that work? For example, in regards to this personalization, we looked into it before at Travel Perk, but our match rate was super low because we wanted to run an A/B test on a landing page to say using personalization increases the conversion rate by X, but our match rate was 15%. So to get a statistical result was going to be impossible. And we thought, why should we even do this if the match rate is so low anyway? Because the theory is that you have a high match rate when it's from bigger companies, but if it's your coffee shop down the road, obviously you're not going to have any match rate, right? If it's a smaller company. So if you want to do the product-led bottom-up approach with thousands of smaller companies, does that even work with personalization and ABM?
Yeah, so the match rate ranges from both the vendor and I suspect in Europe, the match rate may even be lower. What I've seen is ranges from 30%, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. And Europe has always been a little bit harder. So as a marketer, thinking through, okay, so I can do the IP address and matching, but also think through what I really want to achieve, right? A lot of companies who use ABM strategies really want to acquire those big hero clients. So you want to really get the top, let's say like 30 clients, or as you are like a one-to-one strategy, and then your top 100 or 200 clients as one-to-few strategies. And then a lot of companies use one-to-many, where you target by industry or roles, etc. And in the COVID situation where your budget is probably lower, and people are not necessarily really spending quite a bit. So as a marketer, maybe it's time to think through what's actually my priority. If my priority is really to acquire that 30 lighthouse clients, using more of a user and person-based ABM strategy may be actually enough to really hone in on those people that potentially either you already started a conversation, or you are really want to get and focus your efforts there.
It makes a lot of sense. And the thing I think of is, like, imagine you work for a SaaS company and your ARPA is pretty low, say it's like $30 or $40 per month. You wouldn't be able to go after this strategy, right? To go after like these bigger accounts because you don't have anything to sell, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself very well.
Say that again.
What I mean is, when you do these like ABM personalization strategies, given like the match rate, you're matching bigger companies. For a SaaS company where you have like just like a small plan where you can't get a big lifetime value, it wouldn't make sense for these SaaS companies to even implement an ABM or personalization strategy then, if you don't have the sales team or anything, if that makes sense. Like Typeform, like the average ARPA is like $40 per month. So for Typeform, it wouldn't make any sense. That's my hypothesis.
Yeah. So like there's a more scalable way to do it, which is industry or company size. Do like the bigger sort of category type of personalization, versus if you sell into bigger enterprises and you really want to get that client from like Coca-Cola, and then you get like investing in more of a Coca-Cola specific landing page or strategies, even like different people within Coca-Cola, and you can have like different methods too.
Okay, so like your level of personalization depends on the size of account, basically. The most simple way.
The clients, yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And another thing we were discussing was the fact that companies that now may be acquiring a lot of customers recently because there's a increased need for their product, might have a false sense of security, in the sense that they have all of these customers and they think they're going to make all this money, but actually they're not, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've seen, so if you are like working in online collaboration or a remote workspace, you'll probably see a huge increase on user demand, and probably also a lower cost per click, cost per impression, because across the board, I've seen for a mobile, at least, anecdotally, like a 10 to 15% lower cost per installs. And then for desktop, we've also seen like 20, 30% lower like upfront cost, like per impression and click. But also, especially for B2B companies, a lot of companies are controlling their spend. So if you are a vitamin, and it's good to have in good times, maybe you're like, oh yeah, I can use this SaaS product to improve my productivity by 5%, and it's good enough. Versus now, companies are tightening their belts and they're looking at their SaaS spend. So your potential customers may not really start to buy right away. So the conversion be lower, and your actual acquisition cost may even stay the same or even higher. So it's really important to look at your downstream metrics. If you are acquiring all these free users, how are they onboarding? How are they activating? Are you retaining them over time, or are they just came in because of a temporary need, like you said? So it's important to retain these users to make sure they also build a habit of using the product over time, and that's when you can monetize them and really get them to stay.
Makes sense. You have to prove to these guys that they still need you, like way into the future.
Absolutely.
And what do you think is like the best way to educate people on like different use cases in the product? Is it like through retargeting ads or email marketing or in-product stuff? Like how can you educate your users that there's all of these things that you can do with your product,
Yeah, I typically prioritize the in-products and organic channels since they are already part of our ecosystem. Making sure the onboarding experience, the education is really solid. So you don't have a blank screen when people come in. They know here are the resources and here are the product demos. Here are some in-product notifications or educational emails that we can send them to really get them to understand. And what I found is if the user can try a functionality within products, it's almost always more effective than later on we send them an email and just talk about the feature itself. So let people to actually try the functionality and use it. And then for the people who are almost like at risk of churning, let's say they haven't come back in 2 weeks. If your product, if you were expecting the users to come back, every day or every week, if you see the signal that they're about to churn, and that's when you want to really like scale up your retention efforts. And if they're already look like they were churning, and the retargeting could be helpful because the in-product efforts may not actually reach them anymore.
Okay, it makes sense. So a lot of brands now should be focusing a lot of their efforts on retention, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a time to, first of all, retain your existing customers, making sure that they stay with you and they renew their contracts when they're potentially looking to cut cost. And two, for the new users you acquired, really try to retain them over time. And that's the more sustainable way to go.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. So we have one question in the comments. So let me read it out and we'll see if we can answer it. So it says, I had a question regarding MVPs and growth experiments. How do you best choose which experiments to run in this difficult time? And more generally, how do you think about validating product ideas?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Experiments in this time period, we need to be really careful because user behavior may not be the same during this time versus pre or post COVID. Some of the users are looking for temporary solutions, and if you are, let's say, a productivity tool or like enable remote work, they may just need your solution for a month or 2 months, and your experiment may gives you information about like COVID, but then afterwards it may not actually be applicable. So make sure always to have your holdout group when you run A/B tests or experiments, so that at least you understand the sustained user behavior, and take your experiment with a grain of salt, knowing that your conversion rate may be different.
It makes sense, because I know a lot of like SaaS companies or companies, they run an experiment, say they cap it at like, they want to look at like the 2-week activation rate for new users. They run the experiment, say the 2-week activation rate increased, but then they forget to follow this cohort over a longer period of time and see the real impact on what they actually did, right? So in these times, you should look at like the longer tail impact of your experiment, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always think about what's the trade-off, right? Like maybe the activation is really high, but they don't upgrade to a higher plan. So you always wanted to have a whole dog group to see the long-term impact.
Okay, that makes complete sense to see, like, because sometimes you increase activation rates, but then you decrease your new subscription rates, right? So, but that's sometimes hard to see because you don't have enough data. So it says, sorry, it wasn't a significant test. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But then you wait a long time and then you see actually it was or wasn't. If that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. Yep, you got it.
Cool. And like lastly, if you had to give like 1 or 2 pieces of advice to people for their growth marketing this year, like what other pieces of advice would you give brands to like really have a big impact?
Yeah. So I think the sophistication for digital marketing is really important to build. Now, obviously, like offline channels are hard to do. So a lot of companies are moving into investing more on digital marketing, where before a lot of the offline channels were still the main area. So the competition for growth marketing or digital marketing space is going to grow. So you want to start thinking through how can I become more sophisticated in using the different strategies, both in your creative and your targeting technologies to really stand out in the very crowded marketplace. And second is for marketers, really start to collaborate more closely with your product team, your engineering team, your customer success and customer services teams, because like we said, right, like the retention and monetization is going to become even more important. And how do you connect the dots between your acquisition efforts with your downstream retention and monetization efforts is going to become more and more important. So collaborating with cross-functional teams to really close the loop.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, because like most companies, I would say that product team and the marketing team are separate teams. And sometimes they can even be in separate offices or separate floors, right? Yeah. So the way companies need to go are to build like these cross-functional teams, pods, whatever you want to call them, where you might, for example, have like a monetization team. And even if it lasts just for like 1 quarter and they have like one thing they want to nail, like they have a cross-functional team with people from different teams, whether it's like customer success, marketing, product, all trying to like solve one problem. Do you think that would be like the way to go for companies?
Yeah, I really like the pod structure because you don't have to necessarily make permanent personnel changes just yet. You can have this pod as your tiger team and try out, okay, like, does this actually make positive impact and try things out. And this can become almost a model or like a pioneer within the company to really champion the growth culture and share the learnings with the rest of the company and really bring the culture along. So the rest of the company also started to really think more collaboratively in terms of growth.
Makes a lot of sense. Do you have time for 2 more questions? Because we've just had 2 more in the comments.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So one question is, like, what's your opinion on MVP versus MMP, which I think is minimal marketable product? Like, I'm not sure what the question is exactly, but
yeah, I remember hearing the term some time ago. So I think MMP really focused on like your product needs to find your viable market, right? Like it needs to sell to people that actually need it. and versus MVP probably focus more on like can this product actually fit your like is actually viable. I do think it is very important to build a product that has a market and its users actually need it, and also making sure there's big enough of a market that you can that you're going after. In early stage, you probably need to focus a lot more on, okay, there's like a very small niche of people that really, really need my product, and I really win that small niche. But also always have a view of, if we were to scale this effort, and how scalable is this, and how this is to the broader market.
Makes sense. I came across this term online, which I think was called something like onion marketing, where if you imagine the market as an onion, you have to go after like the first one first, like the first niche, and then go after the other ones. But you imagine how big the market is and start with like the first one and really nail that and dominate that, because in the beginning you obviously have limited resources, right? You can't go after everyone in the beginning. You have to be known for something and really make your product great for that one thing, and then go after the next one. So onion marketing.
I like that. It's like onion. Hopefully your onion will become bigger and bigger.
And the last question we have time for is, for a young SaaS B2B company, what's your favorite channel?
Ooh. I think start to think about your viral loop from really early on, and when you design the product, design your viral loop in the product. Really think through if your product will get better if more people are joining. So that invite flow, and how do people tell each other about your products, and how do they bring new people into the products, and how do you incentivize these users to be your champions for your products, is probably the first thing I would recommend.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Building in that viral loop early on, so that any other like traffic you get is multiplied, I guess.
Yeah,
has a bigger impact. Cool, makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for giving away all of your growth marketing secrets with us. Had a really great chat, and I guess if people want to learn more about like growth marketing, you post like articles not only on LinkedIn, etc., and they can follow you on LinkedIn, right? I guess.
Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn, and just Ian/Holly, and then Twitter, like @HollyNY.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a great day or evening, depending on where they are in the world. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.